I'm CEO of Access Partnership, and in case you're new to us, our mission is to make sure that as many people as possible in the world have access to transformational technologies without impugning competition or consumer choice. It's a narrow but fun path that we've laid for ourselves, and we use policy as our toolbox. And because we do that all day, every day, we know that even technology that creates the most positive transformation is pretty much as nothing unless it's married to policy that will help it take root and ensure that users trust it. So if that doesn't happen, we don't have to overcomplicate the outcome. It is not something that you need to over-intellectualize. Without the marriage of good technology and effective policy, capital is invested unevenly in individual markets. It's invested unevenly across geographies. Opportunity is shared unfairly. Economic lacunas open up between people and societies, and the old rules of might and right and wealth and power tend to apply over fairness and shared human advancement, which is not a good outcome. So we spend a lot of time in our company predicting outcomes and then walking back those outcomes to see if we can get to something better, so that at worst innovations are accepted, or better still trusted, and at worst, or at best rather, they're improved on and form the basis of advancement and achievement everywhere. But really, like all of you, and I don't pretend to know all of you, but I am 100% convinced that, like you, we have been a little bit remiss, lax even in preparing the world for artificial intelligence, which will form a theme of what we talk about across today. Even if we know what happens now, we also know how to improve the outcome. That's the good news. Don't know if you're all familiar with this pattern, but let's just paint a picture. So start with the present and the race that's on between companies that want to use AI to maximum advantage. Those that have designed it and are using it today, they'll get the most out of it. That one is easy. Where AI was not invented, however, right, that will need to be imported, sometimes by stealth and sometimes just forthrightly bundled in various services. And to do that, AI exporters will say that their AI is safe and good and transformational, and that can be true. They should be able to say that. It can be true, but in the same way that a scalpel is transformational to a patient, but equally it can be very dangerous if it's in the wrong hands. We also know that dangerous things will happen, right? At some point, probably in a country not the UK or the US or anywhere in the G7, and then the export of AI will be curtailed. That's what it'll be called, curtailed in lots of places. So AI importers will be told to stop or to disentangle AI from everything else, to feel like throw away the lesser part of it, which will be just about as successful as it was for Hamlet's heart as it will be for artificial intelligence. And then there'll be a lot of howling from developers of AI, users, and policymakers around the world will react and start to impose hasty, often cack-handed rules that seek to retain productivity gains, but also protect the citizen as much as possible. At which point, mark my words, various purveyors of AI will be banking on their USPs, on their unique selling points. Chinese and Saudi and Indian AI will be targeted at countries of the G77 and distinguished from that sort of raw American stuff that, after all, wasn't trained on local data sets the way, say, China's was. And then they'll get into a big shouting match. Big Western tech will claim a more principled use of data and AI, and they'll boast better guardrails. And they'll effectively ask consumers, whom do you trust more? Will it be those in the camp of the avuncular Joe Biden or whomever his predecessor is, or will it be the denizens of the Zhongnanhai complex in Beijing? And then over the medium term, countries that don't ban or only lightly ban AI will get the benefits, but also suffer the most traumas, right? So like any population reaching herd immunity, we know this pattern. There'll be dislocation to workforces and challenges to civil liberty, but also miraculous inventions and solutions that, in very simple terms, put the AI-using countries ahead of others, at which point unwilling to suffer the growth imbalance any longer, most markets will fold. And like so many lawn chairs, they'll accept AI, again suffering the benefits and the blows, mostly for lack of choice. And they'll live that same AI boom and bust that the transformation will wreak on their economies, only they'll suffer it later than most. They'll bear it slower, and they'll bear it from a place of less bargaining power, and frankly from much more resentment, which is something that corporates need to be alive to. So our baseline task, hopefully we'll get some way towards it today, and part of what we're challenged to cover from now until at least the end of the year, when we'll have a better sense of how AI is rolling out, is how to make sure that 10 years from now, even they, right, those last movers, will grow stronger and slowly richer and develop their own AI, maybe even applying the lessons that we've had in the G7 and some of the first places to use it. And at that point, maybe a more definite version of the voluntary commitments that were articulated on the White House lawn this summer will be placed or in place the world over. Now, to get into the practice of making sure that our work today is not too UK or US centric, let's just run a quick experiment looking at a couple of those commitments made by US tech giants and consider how they'll be perceived by those outside of the magic circle of the US, UK, Canada, France, and so on. It's kind of a quick and dirty way of testing how third markets will accept AI from tech companies. So to do this, I will pretend, that I'm a stakeholder in, say, Malaysia, reading a couple of these very fancy principles. Number one, we commit to prioritizing research on societal risks that AI can pose. So I, the Malaysian, hear this in the best telling as how to create process efficiencies for workers in Manchester and San Francisco, and maybe a couple of really white-collar corners of Maharashtra. At the top end, maybe its intent is to help the G7 deal with diabetes, but where I am, the big societal risks are child hunger and ethnic and confessional tension. And I have absolutely no confidence that these are societal risks that the White House was talking about. At worst, I'm imagining that AI is going to help Chinese trawlers optimize their fishing in my archipelago and deprive my population of a necessary source of protein. And I'm imagining how fast my country's muftis will demand a ban on AI because it lacks a societal framework that's in any way Islamic. So we'll do one more. We commit to publicly reporting AI systems capabilities, limitations, and areas of appropriate and inappropriate use. It's a little bit subjective. In Malaysia, we don't publicly report commercial problems, and I don't really believe that anyone else voluntarily does that either, anywhere in the world. So this, at best, sounds to me like virtue washing. I'll never really get the full picture on the risks of AI, not least because the AI company who will define what's a limitation is the one telling me. That's surely putting the fox in charge of the hen house. And anyway, what is appropriate use? If it helps me identify fraud in my growing economy, in my extractable sector, say, then I'm going to use it. And if lots of civil society gets swept up in the dragnet, well, that's just the cost of development. I have to take the macro view, the same as the Chinese. So too bad. If I don't, I'll get crushed. You get the idea. My purpose here today is really not to deride any of the work that's been done to shape rulemakings around AI. I think, on the contrary, at this point, it would be irresponsible not to build on any reasonable foundation. But let's agree, at least today, that we won't have any pride of authorship, just selfless contribution. And part of our contribution today has to be to understand how the rest of the world will see policies that we develop in the UK, and to make sure ultimately that at each step we decrease the chances of that inauspicious unfolding that I described earlier, and hopefully go a bit further. Our work needs to enable the dissemination of AI across the global economy so that unhappy scenario I opened with doesn't come to pass. It's kind of a modest proposal. In fact, we should be stamping our feet and demanding a Geneva Convention for AI and a set of Bretton Woods institutions around its development and its regulation and its testing, but we know that the international community moves in baby steps, if COP is anything to, or even for that matter, the General Assembly is anything to go by. And so today, maybe for as long as we can hold the thought, remember that whatever we put in place should at least consider how others will read it. That's the only way to build trust universally. And secondly, make it easier and not harder to experiment with AI locally. The better for people locally to understand how to optimize it, what it's good for and what it isn't for them. And if we can do that, and if we can start to anticipate Malaysia's skepticism in our process of designing policies, we'll certainly have earned some lunch and contributed to the work that this country is doing to put the UK at the center of fair and lasting development of AI and all the policies that will give it reach. So I hope that you can contribute to that and actively participate in our panels today. As you see, we start out with AI and move into everything that enables AI, including connectivity and content. And so with that, I thank you, welcome you to the conference, thank you very much for making the trip, and look forward to seeing you across the day.